we were both very raw. She said, the one thing I'll say for you is that a lot of people talk about change. You actually do it. You actually change. It was really quite emotional to have her say that at that time. At the time that, that book was downloaded, I was very head-centered, very dependent on logic, even though I was a creative person. And literally, I feel my emotions more, which is important because it's like it goes back to my answer to your first question, that this is not just like an intellectual decision to be a heart-centered leader. It's can you feel? Can you process your emotions? Which doesn't mean that you sit there and you cry all day long in the corner. It means if something, you need to work through something. If you need to work through something, then you work through it. And if you are moved by something, or it's part of being a fully formed human being. And
100%.
So at least I feel like I have not become like this magical person. I feel like I have a much clearer understanding of what I need to work on, and I'm trying. 2005, I was a ghostwriter on a book that, we interviewed 20 of the best CEOs in the world. And a significant number of them were really tough people. And they would not think twice about, we got to fire 1,000 people and keep our margins up. Fears and dreams are neighbors. What you most want in life is most terrifying to you. The real metric of this lifetime, business, personal, every respect, is how did you control your state? Did you move through this world in an abundant, loving manner, or did you move through like, I've got a hole in my stomach from worrying, and I hate my neighbors and they hate me, and people quit as soon as they can in my company. That's the metric, I think, is how did you move through the world? I have to tell you a bit of the story.
This is the Business Philosopher Within You podcast. I'm your host, Bhavesh Naik. An essential part of what we explore on this podcast is what it means to be a human being, so that we can bring to bear all our human faculties to building a high-functioning business organization that can stand the test of time. A key to building such an organization are the leaders who are authentic about their own humanness. The guest I have for you today has a refreshing approach to leadership, one that focuses on the power of human connection and bringing heart to the center of leadership. Bruce Kasanoff is a Wharton MBA who is also an executive coach, author, and speaker. He works with leaders to help them reconnect with their heart and access their highest and best talents. He is a prolific writer and thought leader, challenging us to embrace our authenticity and lead with compassion. More than 800,000 people follow Bruce on LinkedIn, and over 500,000 entrepreneurs and professionals read Bruce's 5 newsletters, each focusing on a different aspect of personal and professional growth. He is the founder of Band Reality, an invitation-only community for accomplished individuals who strive to lead with love. He has authored several books, including Making It Personal, which focuses on his expertise in personalization, and I Am, which has been described by a leader, or a reader rather, as both poetic and mindful. I am pleased to have you on this podcast, Bruce.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
800,000 followers on LinkedIn, Bruce. Now, if I was talking to someone who specializes in getting followers to folks on social media, I probably won't ask you the question I'm about to ask you. But I'm going to ask you this question because, what the listeners of this podcast, me, and most likely you as well, I can guess, what we strive for is connection, human connection, and a meaningful connection with people. We don't necessarily worry about the sheer number of followers, right? And here you are. So how does one go about building a followership? And I mean, by meaningful followership or meaningful connection, I mean people who are engaged with the message, right? And you have a message. So how do you go about building a following of this magnitude and this strength and this level of connection. What is your secret to building this kind of a following?
Well, I'm not sure it's a secret, but I was fortunate to the week that LinkedIn announced that it was going to have content on the site. It was basically just a job hunting site.
Yeah.
And I think this 12 years ago, maybe 13 now.
Sure.
And they had hand selected 100 people, Barack Obama, David Cameron, Richard Branson, to be LinkedIn influencers.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, the second I heard this, I thought, I have to be in this program, which is a completely irrational thought. I mean, I wasn't well known. I wasn't anything, but I had to, and it's happened a few times in my life. I've had this moment where I just said, I got to do that. I had just written a book, co-authored a book called Smart Customers, Stupid Companies, about customer experience, which is where I was in that space at the time. And I sent a note to the executive editor that said, let me in. I want every week I'll write a smart company, stupid company contrast.
Yeah.
And a week later, he said yes. I mean, I was one of 3 people who I think pitched our way into the program.
Yeah.
That was the only pitch I ever made. Never talked to him in person until much later. And then when I got in, I was the only non-famous, not the only, there were 3 of us, non-famous person at first. And I started to write about, do what I said, and nobody cares. Nobody's reading. Nobody, zero, the opposite of 800,000. And then I sat back and I said, I'm kind of in this. There's no editor, nobody. So I thought, what do I really care about? And I was tired of writing about marketing. And I realized I care about doing well by doing good. So that phrase was in my head. And then, and this is the part that's relevant to your question, then I realized the only possible success strategy I could have in the midst of all these famous people with staff and PR people around them was to be the human being in the LinkedIn influencer group, to be the person that wrote my own post. If you commented, I would respond. If you asked a question, I would respond. And I actually cared about you as opposed to, no, I just want to be famous.
Yeah.
And that's how I built, the followers and then subscribers is just, but they are actual human being.
Yeah. And it's an organically growing network. Is that correct?
100. I have no staff. I have no budget.
You didn't pay for it.
Anything.
Yeah.
Nothing.
You didn't run any ads. Yeah.
I mean, I don't even have, I saw something on someone on LinkedIn today announced you have 30,000 connections, which is the maximum you can have. I don't have anywhere close. I have under 10,000. I think it's under 10,000 actual connections because I actually am hesitant to connect with somebody I don't know.
Right.
So, no, I don't have anything. And in fact, that concept is abhorrent to me. Like that.
Yeah.
Because I've had people saying, we can scale you, we can comment for you, we can do it. Like,
right.
No.
Yeah. Go from 800,000 to 1.6 million, right? Why would you want to do that?
I have friends who have done that. And, but no, I'm actually in the opposite space right now, which is that I don't, so for example, I have fewer newsletter subscribers than followers, but those are people who actually respond or at least read, each week. And then what I really care about, which is like my band reality community, is can I get to know 100, people really well as opposed to, all that others. But
sure.
But there's value in both. I mean, I definitely enjoy influencing in a positive way people I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's a very gratifying thing to get a note from somebody who says, I haven't said a word to you in 3 years, but I've been reading your stuff and it's been helpful. That's wonderful.
Sure. Absolutely. You said something something that caught my attention, which is you had an irrational thought and you followed through and you did something, right? And you took an action that many of us would consider gutsy, right? And it might have been out of your comfort zone. Maybe it's not. Maybe that's in your comfort zone. I don't know. But it's something that you followed through on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that brings me to some of the things that you've done in your professional life. And you talk about heart a lot, leading with the heart or leading with heart.
Right.
So what is the definition of heart in your judgment? And I say this because, and I ask this because, well, first of all, we don't ask enough basic questions, right? We kind of take things for granted. And heart is an abstract, and it could be a nebulous topic for a lot of people, unless you've lived it and you actually are in touch with something that you call the heart. It's a real experience for you to live with. And otherwise, it's just become an abstract subject, right? That we don't know what it is. Sure. So what is your definition of the heart? And, what's your experience of that? If you can kind of try to convey the essence of it.
Well, so first of all, I can actually tell you what my image of my own heart is, which is this, because I'm going to preface this by saying, over the last 5 years, I figured out I trust my head, I don't trust my heart. Yeah. And in fact, I took my heart and when I was 3 years old, or roughly, and locked it in this protective cage so it wouldn't get hurt. Mm-hmm. And but now it's a prison because when I had this realization, I went to ChatGPT or one of those things and said I described the scared little mouse in a prison, like I just and so I actually have this image. Yeah, that it's both amusing and terrifying of what my heart looks like. This little mouse, trapped like this, and
somewhere in here. And so
right, and so when I think about this, I think, okay, well, on one hand, intellectually I understand this. Emotionally, I'm still in second grade, and to me, it's the ability to be in touch with your emotions, to be able to process your emotions, and to feel, as opposed to just think.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. And that heart, and obviously you're not talking about the physical heart.
I'm talking about your feelings, your emotions,
the feeling.
Can you process in a non-intellectual way what happens in the world around you, to you, through you? It's how does it feel to be human, as opposed to what do you think?
Yes. Yeah, right. That is I wasn't going to go here. I was planning to go to this idea next, and maybe in the end of the conversation, but I'm going to go here right now because this is where we are, and that's what my heart is telling me to do, right? Okay. You've written this book called I Am, right? And there is a feeling
co-author
of
the book, just to be clear. Amy Vlaschker was my co-author. Yes.
Yeah. And you talked about I am. So I think, are you referring to the sense of I, or I am, or me, this person, that is felt somewhere in the heart region? Or is it something different?
Well, so I have to tell you a bit of the story.
Please.
So in 2017, I think it was, I lived in Park City, Utah. I had a loft with a big old sofa in it, very comforting place. I used to go up there and meditate. And I was meditating, and I got an entire download. Write this book called I Am. Write it with your friend Amy. Take turns writing passages. Each page should be I am ... and then a word or phrase that's positive or uplifting, and then write a few paragraphs, and then leave the opposite page blank so that the reader, whatever comes up, they can write in the book for themselves and go do this. And it was the most, it was like, it wasn't actually this, but it was like, do you have a pen and a piece of paper? Because write this down, because this is coming from a high source and you should do it.
Yeah.
It was so, and the whole thing, I've taken longer to explain than it took to download. It was just instantaneous. It was so strong. I don't think I'd ever had listen, buddy, go do this. Although it was not aggressive, but
so it got grabbed by the lapels,
it was so specific. I had nothing to do with anything that I was doing in my career then. And I emailed Amy, and she, to her credit, said, sure. And 6 weeks later, we had finished the text of the book. We took turns. And at the time, I didn't understand the importance or the meaning of I am. It has all sorts of spiritual, religious, it depends connotations, depends on your perspective. Even the question of, is that a statement from God? Is it a hint that we're all connected? Is it, you can really go down a rabbit hole with this. I was oblivious to all that. Yeah. And to this day, I wonder about why I wrote the book. I know how I got the idea, but I don't know, meaning, why was I urged to write the book? Not why did I come up with it? I did not come up with this idea.
Yeah. Sure.
And so I think that's important to this conversation, because I think the first answer I gave you was the best logical answer I gave you, that it's my emotions and feelings, whatever. Yeah. But the more I sit with these ideas and kind of, who am I? What is reality? Are we all connected? I think it's different than what most of us go through life.
100%. Yeah.
And to be able to perceive with greater clarity how we work, how everything works, I think requires much more than just thought.
Yeah.
And so I would put everything else into that space, including heart. Meaning sometimes it's actually emotion, sometimes it's feelings, but it's also all the things, it's being in touch with all the things that are not conscious thought.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And some people probably call it intuition. Some people, and you refer to it as a reality. Yeah. Peace and sometimes joy, ecstasy, love, all of that. You use the word love in your leadership. And all of those things are probably something that sort of comes out of that place, if the placeless place, if we can call it, right?
And I think it's greater intelligence too. I think that there's greater intelligence to be had from pursuing, if you have balance. Like I encourage me. I've interrupted you a bit, but I think this is important, that everyone I truly respect, who I think they're able to go from head to heart to silence to spirituality, every one of them moves on a continuum. They don't stay one place. They don't. Yeah. So, for example, and the danger in this, and where people warp it sometimes, is that they talk about, I'm in touch with my heart so much that I never think. That's bad.
Yeah.
I think so much that I never feel. That's bad. It's this. And when you go say, I'm going to go deep into silence, I'm going to come back into the most logical, decision making I can. Those are the people I respect, because you can, the complete picture.
Yeah. So there is your experience of the heart, and let's stay with that terminology. And there is also trying to convey this to someone else. So you talk about heart-centered leadership. Is that correct? And I think you kind
Sure,
of
I've
referred to
used
it.
that word. Yeah, yep, yeah.
And and you coach folks, and you coach
Mhm.
leaderships and leaders. So when you bring this to them, could you kind of give us an idea of what it is that you're trying to convey to them? When you say, when you talk about heart-centered leadership, what are you trying to ask them to do, or are trying to inspire them to do, for example?
Sure. So I think there's a very fundamental choice that we all have. Leaders, human beings, everybody.
Sure.
And the simplest way to say it is I can take actions, I can make decisions based on one of two things.
Yeah.
Love, which I also think of as passion.
Mhm.
What I'm drawn to, what I
Yeah.
want to do. And
Yeah.
then there's fear. What I worry about, I'm afraid I'm going to be irrelevant. I'm afraid I won't have any money.
Right.
And I would suggest that most companies, most managers, leaders operate on a fear-based level.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, if we don't get moving, we're going to miss the quarterly budget and hell to pay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you'll lose your job, or you won't get promoted, or
Sure.
it's all fear.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't necessarily say that. They might
Yeah.
argue with you, but I
Yeah.
mean, just sit there with a piece of paper and write down the
Sure.
things they say and the systems. It's fear.
Yeah.
And the alternative is to say, I'm so excited about this vision. I'm excited about what we're accomplishing together. It doesn't mean it's easy. Some weeks are tough as hell, but we are going to a good place. It's like whether it's a sports team or somebody trying to put on a Broadway show, it's like you are not going to put on a great show by being scared all the time. In fact, you're going to put on a great show by doing the opposite. Like, this is dangerous, but it's exhilarating, and I want to do this, and I want to get the best people. That's what leading with heart is kind of that. We're going to a positive place. We're excited. We're trying to bring out the talent in each other. We're trying to push past our comfort zone, but it's not a fear-based thing. It's like, let's climb that mountain because it's fun. That level.
Sure. I totally get it. 100% that it's not just the leaders. I think our humanity, unfortunately, has been scripted right now as it stands.
Our society is like this, yeah.
Our society is like this. It's fear-based society, and we are more pushed by our fears than led by our love. As there's a quote somewhere, I'm sure, that goes something like that, right? That pulls. So, leading with love rather than fear. What are some of you talked about being real in the world, and just because I lead with my heart doesn't mean that I forget about the implications of those things that I need to be doing, right? And the effect that I have in the world. So what are some of the consequences of leading with love rather than fear, as you have seen in the leadership and the world around them, the world that they affect?
I think they're profound. I think that it opens up incredible opportunities. I think it brings out the talent in people. I think it's because it's expansive. It essentially is an abundance philosophy that we don't live in. I mean, I don't know why anyone would think we live in a world of scarcity. If you look around, look up at the stars and say, we have like this tiny, 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 tiny view of all the things that are in the universe, and they're everywhere. And even among us, every time we look at anything, there's more complexity than we thought. There's more life than we thought. There's, so it frees you from this kind of prison of, if I make a mistake, I'm dead. And first of all, I don't even know if dying is death. And is that good of all? The people that I most respect are the people who were just, they leapfrog what was thought to be possible. They were like, We can do it.
Yeah.
And like, how dare you? I mean, like, even just the thought, I'll give you a really tangible
Sure.
example. One of the simple strategies that's used in business and innovation is this idea of 10x, not in terms of
Mhm.
growth, but 10x in terms of marketing or benefits. It's like
Sure.
either 10 times the benefits or 1/10 the cost. So for example, I forget what it's called, probably Crest spin brush or something. That
Uh-huh.
instead of selling a $150 electric toothbrush for $10 or $9, you can get a
Yeah.
basically battery powered, and you basically get most of the benefits for 1/10 the cost. And like,
Sure.
gee, I mean, I'm sure that whoever was competing with them was seeing this and why didn't we think of this? Well,
Yeah.
you didn't think of it because you probably had a fear-based culture that you're not allowed to propose things like that. Like, you
Sure.
kidding me? Like, why would you
Yeah.
say that
Yeah.
we're going to lower our margins from $90 to $2? Well, because
Yeah.
you can sell 100 million of them, and
Mhm.
so, so I just think it creates all sorts of opportunities, and I mean, look at it this way. If you're afraid, you get stupid.
Uh-huh.
If I basically, if you're crossing the street and all of a sudden a, a, a giant truck is coming at 80
Right.
miles an hour at you, most people are going to freeze.
Yeah.
They just don't know
Sure.
what to do. They're out of
Yeah.
ideas.
Yeah.
If you're not afraid and you're empowered, and I've said to you, I believe in you, and here are tools, and we'll talk every week, and
Sure.
you're going to be like coming home at night excited and like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I can do more. Can I hire someone?
Sure.
Sure, you can hire someone if you make the case for that. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so he opens up possibilities instead of, every company we admire is essentially doing that. Is saying,
Yeah.
I mean, some of them can be tough places to work. I don't mean to glorify
Sure.
people,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, if you had a choice, which job would you want? One in which you're threatened every day, or one in which you're empowered every day?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. The choice is clear. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. A number of things you said, and one of the things that you talked about is leading others and coaching others, right? And now coaching is, to me, coaching is part of being a leader, or it is so. And you coached others, but you also worked with some coaches yourself. So and I always have believed that the best leaders are also best followers, best teachers are also best students, right? So if we're those of us who can coach others are also those who can be coached well by others, right?
I talked to
And
my coach 3 hours ago. So,
there you go,
literally.
right?
So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and now when we bring coaching or the ideas of coaching into leadership, it makes us a better leader. Would you agree with that? Or is
Well,
how do you see coaching in leadership?
this is a complicated subject because I'm not sure
Yeah.
that the average leader would understand this to be true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some do, some don't. It
Sure.
depends on, there's different styles of leadership.
Sure.
Some leaders are much more, on managing resources. I mean,
Yeah.
I can tell you people I've worked with who their initial way of thinking of the world is basically I'm moving money and assets around,
Yeah.
and not really a people, centric
Sure.
thought
Sure.
at all. So, and I think also one caveat is that, people are drawn to people they feel comfortable with. I don't coach any Machiavellian leaders. I don't coach any really financially obsessed leaders. I mean, I coach people who have very clear financial goals, but they have a bigger perspective. That's who comes to me.
Sure. Yeah.
And so when we get out of this, then I'm talking theoretically, because about other people that obviously I mean, for example, I cut my roots are in writing, and in 2005, I was a ghostwriter on a book that, we interviewed 20 of the best CEOs in the world. And I could tell you that, a significant number of them were really tough people, and and they would not think twice about, well, we got to fire 1,000 people and
Right.
keep our margins up. And so are those
Yeah.
people that focused on coaching? I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, I think the people,
Right.
I've also, one person, in particular that I worked with, he was running a startup that was doubling every year.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with him until his company was exceeded $1 billion in valuation. And
Yeah.
right around that time, he tested a program to give. He had 600 employees. He offered everyone in the company, a coach. That
Mm-hmm.
was truly an extraordinary thing that he did.
Yeah.
And
Sure. Sure.
and the interesting part about it was there were a number of employees who were hesitant to accept that offer, which
Yeah.
surprised me. I never really saw that coming.
Yeah.
But, because
Yeah.
it so
Oh,
works
yeah.
both ways. How do you feel about being coached, and how do you feel how important it is for you to be able to
Yes.
do that?
Oh, that's an excellent point. And it's an excellent point that there is still resistance among a lot of us to not wanting to be coached. Oh, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. Right. There's a saying in training and coaching industry, which is our industry, that the people who really, really need coaching will not come anywhere near it.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
The ones who actually benefit the most and they come to coaching and teaching and learning and watch a lot of YouTube and the continuous learners, they are the 10% who are already learning a lot from a lot of different sources, and they're just getting more and more competent, and they're learning more, and they're staying at the edge. The people who actually benefit the most are those who never, ever go to a YouTube and learn something from someone or never get coached by anyone. And they say, no, I don't need it. They're the ones who, because they'll leapfrog in terms of their effectiveness if they just go talk to a coach or just kind of open themselves up to learning something from someone.
So I'll
But they
give you
don't.
the most credible statement I can make on this is to quote Marshall Goldsmith. He's probably the number one executive coach in the world. I'm in
Right.
his 100 coaches community. And
Of course.
Marshall
Yeah.
over and over and over again says the number one success criteria for being an effective coach is client selection. If you do exactly what you just said, if you pick the people who are ready to do the work, to take feedback, you will be successful as a coach. And if you fail in that regard, it doesn't matter that you're talented, you're smart, you're not going to be successful. And if you think that you're a successful coach because you're so brilliant, no, pick the right people.
That's true.
And then give them it's not that hard to kind of help someone see clearly when they're motivated to see clearly.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. And I learned that the hard way. I used to think there was a time in my life when I was much younger that I used to think that I'll coach anyone and I can teach anything to anyone. And as I get older and hopefully a little bit wiser, I realize that that's not true. The student has to be ready. And
that's right. That's right.
And as a student, I have to be ready if I go to a coach, and I need to be ready to do what I need to do to set my ego aside and follow the process. Right.
Right. Yeah. It's so true.
And I think I heard you say something. I want to clarify this a little bit. So, a leader, are you saying that a leader doesn't have to be a coach to be an excellent leader? Or are you saying that a leader who is also a coach is a different animal altogether? And it's a different category.
Yeah, I guess if you push me, I would say I could probably name leaders who are successful who are not good coaches.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say that's not ideal.
Yeah.
But,
that's true.
There are certainly people who lead through such a strong vision, who have so much tenacity and drive, who are so good at picking talent. And for example, some cultures are complete meritocracies, sink or swim.
Sure.
You either have it or you don't. And, and so, I think there are exceptions. There's exceptions to everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, Alan Mulally is a good example, former, Ford CEO of somebody who has a whole management system on
Sure.
how to run a company, but how to coach people in the sense of, one of his sayings is love them up, just, love people, own the culture and help people understand it and fit in.
Yeah.
But at the same token, a big part of his system is saying, don't expect me to make all the decisions. In fact, I don't really want to make any of the decisions. I
Right.
want to
Exactly.
let you do it.
Push it down. Right.
Right. Push it down and find the person on the team who has the best answer to whatever problem.
Right.
The management job is to find the problems early, or the potential problems early, find the
Sure.
people with the answer, love them up,
Yeah.
be grateful for their talent and kind of show them the path that this is how we do things here.
Right.
And so I think, is that coaching? I guess it's a form of coaching in the sense that it is providing a really nurturing but demanding culture that's easy to understand.
Sure.
Like, this is how we do things here. Do you want to do things this way? Great. Stay here.
Yeah.
Do you not want to do things? That's fine. That's your decision, but this is how we do things here. And I think that sort of clarity is equally important to what we might call coaching. So
Sure.
It is a form of coaching, even though it might not be a coaching relationship. So.
Sure. Absolutely. Right. So on that point, I'm going to push a little bit more if I could, Bruce. What is the definition of coaching? How would you define it?
I think it is helping people to maintain clarity and focus by helping them to see clearly and to be more in touch with their own awareness.
Yeah.
So to me, the coaching process, I know there's so many different approaches, but I think fundamentally when I think about what works with my clients, what works with the coaches I respect, it's some form of through conversation, through back and forth, through feedback, helping people to see what's actually happening,
right?
Both in terms of your own behavior, in terms of how the interplay between you and the world, and you employees, you and suppliers, how all that is working, and that most people will solve their own problems if they have that sort of feedback, if they have that sort of clarity, if they have a safe place to, what should I do about this?
Sure.
And there's obviously, there's specific frameworks and specific approaches that a coach can use, but that's really basically what it is.
Basically what it is.
Yeah.
So with that definition in mind, if we can go back to this organization, the leader as a coach kind of framing that we're kind of following a little bit here, what would be the difference in an organization that is led by a leader who's a coach versus led by a leader who doesn't consider coaching as a part of his job? Is there
It's a really, really interesting question. I think that the companies that are, the companies that are not led by coaching type of leaders. So one of my early jobs, probably my worst job, was working at Citibank right out of Wharton.
Sure.
And I realized what Citibank did at that time, from my view, was they would basically fund 5 initiatives that were competitive in a space and see which one worked, and they kill the other 4, if any of them worked. And so it was a dog-eat-dog world.
Yeah.
It was kind of chaotic.
Right.
It messed up a bunch of people's lives. The reason it was my worst job was because they offered me a job between, because I did an internship between the first and second year of business school, and then they shut down the division after they offered me the job. That wasn't fun. So I was a victim of the 5, initiatives.
Right.
That's what happens in a non-coaching type of organization. That just we don't care about the people.
Right.
It's kind of a private equity view of come in,
we'll
let go of 500 people,
right,
we'll
right,
grow the margins, we'll buy somebody.
sure.
You don't care about I can tell you, people I know personally who that's how they don't even think about how do we manage the people. Like, what are you talking about, manage the people? Just like we buy this, we get that, we put them together. We don't need 40% of the people. We sell it for, as opposed to, I'm grooming a leadership team that's going to be capable of doubling every year or two. I'm building expertise in an area that's growing, that's hot.
Yeah.
We will pay. I'm one of my clients. Everybody gets, just say the number, gets a few $1,000s for anything you want to do to professional training. You can do it. You can't take knitting, but anything you think will improve your ability to add value. You don't need approval. You have a budget. You can do it.
Yeah.
That's the coaching.
Right. Yeah.
Approach.
So the empowerment, it's more empowered. So you create a more empowered, more self-sufficient organization.
Self-sufficient initiative. You have feedback mechanisms. I talked to a young guy recently who he's working in a company and they have 360 feedback and he doesn't have a coach per se, but at least he's getting more than just his boss saying, this is what we think of you.
Yeah. So Bruce, you coached a lot of folks and a lot of high-powered people, and you coached a lot of leaders and executives, and also you've been coached by some of the best coaches. Marshall Goldsmith is a good example. And you've written a lot about a lot of these things, and I think one of the books that you wrote about was about your coaching method, where you personalize it, your approach. So, is that true? Go ahead.
Well, that's I haven't written. You combined 2 ideas. So no, I haven't written. I've written. I do. I know what you're talking about. Basically, let me just explain so no one who doesn't know.
Please do. Please clarify. Yeah.
So, 20 plus years ago, I wrote a book called Making It Personal, which was all about how do you personalize employee and customer relationships. Yeah. And in doing that, I was part of a larger organization, kind of a think tank type of operation. And so we had a whole methodology for how do you do that, went around the world. Right. I started and ran our training division. And while that had nothing to do with coaching, it did have to do with employees and as well as customers. And over the last 10 years as I become a coach, I used that same framework and thought process to customize the way I treat my own clients. Okay, so I have the benefit of having literally traveled around the world doing this. But I'm adapting it from a framework that was developed for a different purpose. I just want to make that clear.
I made the wrong connection. That was the book about coaching process, which it is
right.
Not.
It's not a book about coaching process, but the framework is what I use. Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. And obviously, you have the benefit of having talked to so many people in your ghostwriting career. So that you have the. So you have a coaching process, or you're familiar with a lot of coaching process. But I have to assume in coaching world, most of us, we develop like a rhythm or a method or a process, for the lack of a better term. And we're talking about heart-centered here. So when we there's this quote by Dwight D. Eisenhower where he says that the planning is indispensable, but plans are useless. planning is indispensable, but plans are useless. So we have all these ideas about what we're going to do. But when we get like this conversation, I have all these ideas about the kinds of things that we're going to explore. But when we talk,
and you start
in the
talking,
moment,
sure.
we just explore in the threads that come up. So in a similar way, I have to believe that there is a preferred method that you have in your mind in terms of coaching others. And I wonder if you can share some of the salient points of what your method is, how you engage them, and what are the kinds of things how do you develop a relationship, what kind of relationship is that, for over how long of a period of time, those kinds of things.
Yeah, so I would generalize by saying, well, I'm going to say one caveat and then I'll answer your question. And
Sure,
the caveat
please.
is that I do think this is a trap for most people with any level of expertise, is you don't want to become what you're famous for or what you're good at, and then just use it to hammer every time instead of using the right tool. And so I do resist this idea that I want to be intelligent enough that if someone walks in my door and they need something completely different from what the last 10 people, that I will do something completely different.
Yeah.
So with that caveat, I would say in general, in a new coaching relationship, I want to know, and I want my client to know, on a number of different levels, from purpose and meaning and income and primary relationship and creativity and talent. How do they think they're doing, and what's most important to them? So the two things is, one is,
how do they,
what it really matters, do I think I'm doing?
How do they think they're doing in those terms?
Yes.
And what's most important to them?
So I want for each, I have 25 different areas, basically, money, total, how much total assets, personal income, yearly, love.
Right.
So I would ask two questions. One is, how do you think you're doing? And two is, how important is? And you're looking for the ones where I need help, and this is really important. That's where. So that kind of gives a game plan of, okay, where should we begin?
Yeah.
With many people, I want to talk to the people around them, with permission and respect, and assimilate that into a report back to my clients that isn't, they can't say Billy hates me. It's generalized, but it's valuable. And so you have from other people's perspective, because self-awareness is the hardest thing, to have.
Yeah.
So then so I don't just have the clients say, oh, I need to work on this, what other people are saying. No, that's not what you need to work on. You think whatever. And then giving the client responsibility for saying, okay, here's the two things you really need to do, and I'm going to help you do it. And you're going to pledge to the people around you that you're going to acknowledge that you're doing this.
Sure.
And you're going to talk to them on a regular basis every month, or, and say, here's what I think I'm doing. How do you think I'm doing? And the process with me is basically trying to maintain that focus and understanding and awareness of how is the person doing, and do they, when they hit roadblocks, and when they hit, you can predict in most coaching relationships, like, okay, this is great until you get to a week or a month where chaos is reigning in the company or in your personal life. And I get that there are weeks where maybe we're not going to talk at all. Maybe we're going to talk for 10 minutes instead of 45 minutes, but do you revert to the negative habits every time the pressure comes on? Well, there's your learning, and so I think that's a microcosm of, in general, how, and in terms of length, you said, I mean, I think in my experience, many coaching relationships are 6 to 12 months. I have
6 to
clients
12.
I've been working with for 5 or 6 years. So
Oh, okay.
it can be, I would say one other thing, and that is, and this is a commonality of, working as a coach and also previously working as a ghostwriter, talking to the same entrepreneurs once a week.
Yeah,
also,
sure.
the process of talking on a regular basis to someone that you try to explain what matters most to you.
Mm-hmm.
And week after week, year after year, you're going to have to answer that question, which, and by the way, the answers are different week to week, month to month, because you might have your high level values, but this month you are, 3 weeks away from running out of cash.
Yeah.
And if you don't close a, funding round, you're dead, and
Right.
so it does change, but that is a profound practice. Having those conversations regularly. I don't care whether you have it with your spouse, you have it with your partner, business partner, your coach, your writer. It's profound. And more than anything, that's what I would say is the most important piece.
Absolutely. I have to assume that, every week the focus may be different because of the life that we lead. And so focus might be cash flow this week, and then it could be the payroll next week, and I have to meet my payroll, and it could be bringing in new sales the following month, whatever. But underneath it, I suppose what you're also doing is going under, and I think they said it, that what is important. Somehow, probably, there are some common elements in all of this that brings them in touch with what's important to them. And the question is, am I doing what's important to me?
Right. So there's a couple of answers to what you just said. One is, it does depend on what kind of coach you are. So for example, the Marshall Goldsmith approach is, he's essentially a behavioral coach. He's trying to find the one or two things that if you did differently, you'd be 2 or 3 or 4 times more effective.
Right.
And if you run a large organization, that's a lot of change. That's a lot of revenue that's going to come.
Sure.
And so he might say, I'm not coaching you on cash flow. I'm not coaching you on marketing. I'm coaching you on the 2 behavioral changes we identified by talking to the 10 or 15 people around you.
Sure.
And so, and that type of coaching, you could come in for 9 months, be gone, and you generated a ton of value there. The other side is, sure, can you, as a writer, certainly, and with some of my coaching relationships, we have exactly what you said, where cash flow 1 week, whatever. And never with I'm trying to be your cash flow expert, but what happens is that you see, I'll give you an example. You see that the leader sometimes makes spur of the moment decisions, and those spur of the moment decisions come back to bite him or her. And so you see it reflected in cash flow, you see it in marketing, you see it in sales, you see it in production, and so okay, well, this is the 8th time this has happened. So let's talk about what's going on here.
Right.
And usually, with enough evidence, a client in a coaching relationship, it will eventually dawn on them with some feedback, that. Okay, so for example, I had a client today say, really with no prompting on my part, but it's a result of a year of conversation, that he benefits from having some friction on his decision making. process.
Yeah.
That rather than just, I'm the CEO, so I can do anything. Like, let's talk about it a little bit. And it's never like, I'm going to give you permission to do this. It's just, okay, let me talk about it. And I'll ask you questions if something doesn't make sense, and if something doesn't make, and that's where the value is that if I'm literally there to help understand your thought process, your analysis of the situation.
Right.
And if I, as a reasonably intelligent person who's listening intently to you, don't understand, then there's something, either you're not communicating the whole depth of your idea, or there's a piece missing, or maybe your assessment of what to do and your analysis of the situation, there's a disconnect. Because I should be able to understand. I don't need to agree with you, but I should be able to understand it. And if I don't understand it, and again, people, I think, relative, if you're in a good, you get 3 months into a coaching relationship and you're comfortable with each other, people understand that if you're coaching me and you don't understand what I'm saying, we get better keep talking about it, because something's wrong on my end. There's something is missing.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the trick here is to ask the right questions and probe in the right way,
and really listen. And really listen. Yeah,
absolutely right. And where does the heart come into play here?
Or again, it's from what is the underlying motivation? What's the drive? Because I mean, I'm just being making sure I'm being discreet. In the last 24 hours, I talked to someone, one of the most expansive people I know, one of the few people I know who's capable of saying, I love you to a business colleague, and have it actually come across as, that's actually sincere, and I feel it. And and very, very difficult thing to do, and inappropriately, not inappropriately. And that person, was still wrestling with, am I being contractive or expansive in this particular thing we were talking about? And my value add was almost zero, in the sense that we were having this conversation because he knows that I know him well enough that he doesn't have to explain all the nuance to me. He doesn't have to explain, who he is and his value system, whatever. But the actual day in and day out of leading with heart, even if you 100% understand the idea, you're 100% bought into the idea, it's hard because there's conflicts. There's significant financial risk going on. There's significant business risk going on. Or even it feels better when I work with people I like. I don't like this person.
Yeah.
But it's better for the business that they're there.
Yeah.
And am I being, am I leading with heart or the opposite?
Yeah.
Depending on what I do about that situation.
Sure.
It's complicated. Yeah. It's really complicated.
It is complicated, yeah. And yet you mentioned something that I thought was kind of important. You said, am I contracting or am I expanding? And which goes to the original conception that you had when you say, when I think about a heart, it's this thing I visualize, right? And that it might be in a cage and I'm protecting it. So contraction of a heart is could probably be linked to more of a fear that we talked
Yes,
about.
that is what
And,
contraction. Yeah.
and expansion is the love.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
So when we get to the heart, when we kind of crack it open in a way,
Mhm.
and and that itself is a frightening thing to do
Yes.
for the person who is doing it, right?
Yes. It can be.
And it can be, and when it happens, there is a reward, and it's an unbelievable reward. Would you? Is that?
I would say that yes.
The love pops open. So go ahead. I'm sorry. My apologies.
Well, I mean,
I'm jumping in.
It like everything. It's you hope that's what happens,
Right.
but there's not always an unbelievable reward. Sometimes the reason that heart is difficult is because sometimes you experience more pain that way.
Yes.
I mean, so for example, I have long embraced the belief that fears and dreams are neighbors. They what you most want in life is most terrifying to you. You know, to go after and to you say, yeah, I could be a lawyer, but I really want to dance. And to say I really want to dance, which is risking your livelihood, maybe your approval of your parents,
Right.
It's much harder to propose to the one person you think fulfills you in life versus the two who are just great, but not at that level. You know, because when you have the two, if one says no, you're still fine. You go to the other person. You know, I mean, so it's much more terrifying to really, you know, and in the same way, if you say your approval means more to me than anything, except that I have to be true to myself. And if you don't give me your approval, and I've said this to you already, it's going to hurt like hell if you reject me.
Right.
But, you know, being expansive and turning towards love says, I'm not going to pay the price, the higher price of being untrue to myself to get your approval, which is essentially intrinsic versus extrinsic rewards. And it's much more appropriate to go after intrinsic, but most people go after extrinsic, you know. Did I get paid more than you? Did I get, you know, it's really the reason that we talk about this and it struggles and we have coaches and it's because it's hard. It is always hard. I would never say it's easy. I would never say you're guaranteed a reward.
You
know?
Right. At least on my part, there is a belief that if you crack that heart open, and I begin with myself, that it's going to hurt like hell in the beginning, but almost always, ultimately, the reward is there, and that reward is that we own more of our heart, more of our love and our expansiveness. And ultimately, that helps every aspect of our life. You know, you mentioned those 25 areas of our lives, and the idea is how do we get to the most common, the continuity under all of them.
Right.
And that's this, we can call it love, we can call it awareness, self-awareness, heart, the depth of our essence, whatever that is. And when we get in touch with that, it could be scary, but you know, it informs all aspects of our lives.
Right. And so I think you're onto something profound, and that it also cuts to, you know, what do we want and where are we going to end up? Someone said to me recently their belief that in the long run, everything works out.
Yeah.
And I asked a question like, well, what do you mean with the long run? And what do you mean by that? And I think their conception of it was a very spiritual conception. And, you know, I mean, nobody takes all their possessions to the grave, and
of course,
and nobody knows whether the grave is the grave and nobody,
Yeah.
and so that,
No one knows.
you're sitting here worried about like, am I going to raise $125 million for my business? And like, good. That's the role you're playing right now, and do your best, but don't be obsessed with the outcome. Be obsessed with, what do you? I mean, to me, it's be obsessed with how do you want to be? Do you want to move through the world with love and with passion and being drawn towards the things that you think you're most excited about and you think bring out the best in others, or do you want to be scared and running and afraid and hatred and angry and so I think there's a very strong case to be made that the real metric of this lifetime, business, personal, every respect, is how did you control your state? Did you move through this world in an abundant, loving manner, or did you move through like, I've got a hole in my stomach from worrying, and I hate my neighbors and they hate me, and people quit as soon as they can in my company. That's the metric, I think, is how did you move through the world, and everything else is pocket change.
Profound words. So
hard to do,
Bruce,
but
and I think the price is worth it. At least in my experience, and so it's I would live like this with the open heart, using your terminology, and with complete open awareness than the other way. So, or I can even make it more stark. I would rather be like this and be homeless. Like this, as in, open heart and fully aware and all of those things, rather than being a billionaire who is, unhappy and angry and shameful, or, feeling guilt for all the things that they've done, and, they're pushed down and they can't bring it up, and the heart is, contracted. So
here's what I think is hard, and I'll give you a personal example.
Sure.
A partner, she volunteers for a local nonprofit. We went last night to their volunteer dinner for the holiday season, 150 people there. And the founder, who I know a bit, was talking about what's happened over the 5 years they've been in existence, and what gratifies not just her but the members of the organization. And I was profoundly moved by what she was saying, and also the way that all the people were moving through the room. And I was thinking, well, I do not. These people are more driven by their heart than I am, And it wasn't a competition; it was just an observation that that I am a long way from being that. I mean, this woman, her name is Megan. When she started this organization, first of all, she didn't intend to start the organization. What she intended was to help two families who were in need when she was at risk of not having a secure house for her family. She'd been laid off, and her impulse was to give. It's like when you said they probably have to be the homeless. I mean, she was not that far away from it, and she's putting charges on her credit card at first to buy furniture for people who previously been homeless, that if they just had the place to live but they didn't have a bed, they'd be homeless again. And so I just think that it's one thing to talk about all this.
Sure.
It's hard to do, and it's easy to say, I'm good, I liked it. We gave $5,000 to charity. We're good. Like, it's good. But and I do think that the standard that you said, even if I don't have a home, I think about that. I think, like, I don't want to lose my home, but I would like to be more heart, centered. I would like to be more driven. So I think it's even among the best of us, it's it's always challenging, and there's always work to be done.
Always work to be done. Yeah. One of the final questions. We're heading towards the end here. Bruce Kasanoff sitting in the loft doing that meditation, where the book is revealed to him. And Bruce Kasanoff today, having this conversation, right, this moment. Are those two different, or what is the difference between these two versions of Bruce? Have you changed? And I asked this because you coached others, and you've been coached by others. So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, enormously. I would say that that experience was part of waking up for me. Yeah, I mean, we would need an equal amount of time to talk about that.
And another episode for this, yeah.
Right, but I think in general terms that one of the things that makes me enjoy what I do and be decent at it is that I have changed myself. And so I was married for 30 years. I got divorced 5 or 6 years ago, depending on when you count. And and I have a very good relationship with my ex-wife, at least I think I do. And the thing that she said during this process, early on in the process of divorce, a very painful time, that makes me proudest is she said, we were both very raw. She said, the one thing I'll say for you is that a lot of people talk about change. You actually do it. You actually change. And
tremendous compliment. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so too. I mean, it was really quite emotional to have her say that at that time. And so, I mean, I was, at the time that, that book was downloaded, I was very head-centered. Very dependent on logic, even though I was a creative person, and and literally, I feel my emotions more, which is important because it's like it goes back to my answer to your first question, that this is not just like an intellectual decision to be a heart-centered leader. It's can you feel? Can you process your emotions? Which doesn't mean that you sit there and you cry all day long in the corner. It means if something, you need to work through something. If you need to work through something, then you work through it. And if you are moved by something, or it's part of being a fully formed human being. And
100%.
So at least I feel like I have not become like this magical person. I feel like I have a much clearer understanding of what I need to work on, and I'm trying. That's the big change.
Yeah. And your trying, to me, is so much more profound than the trying of someone trying to make $1 million or $1 billion. So
yeah. Well, I mean, we all have our values. I appreciate that. I mean, obviously, you're a thinker, and you this. I mean, I wouldn't be here if this didn't resonate with you. And I do appreciate your giving me a forum to share these thoughts. But I think that I guess how do I say this I'm trying not to be political or even related to the news. I do feel, for reasons that are greater than who's been elected or who's anything, that the society, human society in general right now, because we're grappling with 24/7 everything, news and communication, that it does push us in the opposite direction. It pushes us towards fear. It pushes us towards, like the second the fire starts in Malibu, you're like, oh, there's a fire in Malibu. Like, you live in Cleveland. Why do you care? I mean, I obviously from an empathetic standpoint, that's hard. But, every minute of every day, there's always something someplace. And so it's always like, worry about, and then you have a list of 22 things, and then,
Yeah.
and if you don't worry about it, you're a bad person because you don't care about, fill in the blank,
Right. Yeah.
inequality, climate change, votes.
Yeah.
I don't want inequality. I don't want the sun to burn up the planet, but
Yeah.
you can't. You have to be, at some level, like I'm. This is what I love to be doing. This is what I love to work with other people.
Yeah.
How I love to connect with people, and go from there. And don't try and solve every problem in the world.
Yes.
But the one that you can help the most.
Yeah. I think you're also alluding to this idea that, yes, we do protect our heart, we contract. But sometimes we need to also set boundaries, especially as we begin to open up, because, we're getting bombarded by all of these inputs from all directions. And I think, in my opinion, it's going to be even more important. It is more important than ever has been to make sure that we kind of have some boundaries to not have every input come into, because there is 7 billion people on this planet. There are 7 billion things happening every second. And we can't be worried about all of those things, right? So,
no.
And we don't need to know all of that. As long as I kind of bring my center here and do what my passion or my mission as I perceive it to be, and, bring it into my heart and bring it to the world.
Right. Yeah. It requires a lot of discipline to do that. I do a somewhat good job, but not as good as I should.
It's a moving target for me as well. It's difficult to, but. So thank you so much, Bruce, for being on the podcast and sharing your thoughts and sharing your story and parts of your story. I feel like we're just kind of getting started. There's so much more that we didn't get to. And hopefully there'll be some other time when we get together and do this again. And I just want to ask you one last question. If someone wants to get hold of you in some important, meaningful way, what are some of the ways that they can approach you and connect with you and find out more about you?
The easiest way is Kasanoff.com or lastname.com.
Sure.
And use the contact page there or respond really quickly, and or LinkedIn, but Kasanoff's the easiest. And
all right.
And I appreciate that. I appreciate very much you're inviting me to be here.
Thank you for being here. I enjoyed the conversation enormously, and this was a very heartfelt conversation.
Good. Then my work is done. So.
Yes, your work is done. Is there anything that you think that can be improved about the whole process of coming onto this podcast? But the most important part to me is the conversation. So what was it like, and anything that can be improved in terms of
First of all, I'm incredibly impressed that you're asking this question. I mean that sincerely. That is the thing that people fail to do, and it's a powerful thing. And so the fact that you're asking that is tremendous. And I think you're the first person on a podcast who ever asked me at the end that. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
I actually, I really enjoyed our conversation. I think I'm kind of, after saying that, I'm struggling to find something that I thought you listened very well to what I was saying. I didn't feel like you went through your 11 questions and didn't matter what I said. I thought your whole system, like from what we're doing right now, you have a backup for the bad connection. I got, text to remind me. So I really thought, what would I do if anything differently? I guess the only thing, and I don't know what I would have said if you had said this, is I might consider having a wild card question or opportunity like that. I know what I wanted to talk about. I've asked you, 6 or 7 questions now. is there anything that's on your
Ah,
mind that you think would be, valuable to share, or just what's, it's kind of the equivalent of what matters most to you today, apart
yeah,
from this podcast? That something like that. I
sure.
don't know what it would have brought out of me, but
Yeah,
I do think that because there is a tendency anytime you're in a conversation like this that we get so focused that,
yeah,
like I could go through the whole thing and say, well, I'm just about to be named ambassador of the court of St. James.
yeah,
And we never talked about it. And then you read
yeah.
about it in the newspaper tomorrow. You're like, why didn't you say anything? Like, well, you didn't ask me anything that,
Right.
I would have
Ah,
changed the
yes,
subject. So
that's true.
that's probably the
Yes,
only
that's
thing
an
that I
excellent
would.
feedback. Yes, I should. Yeah, that's a. I'll put that in my toolbox.
I'm going to turn
And
that around. Is there anything
yeah,
that I could have done differently that I should consider?
no, I think you spoke from the heart. My job is here, and I one of the things that I like to do is show. Now, you're an author, you get this. Show, don't tell.
Mm.
And if we're talking about leading from the heart, then to my viewers, I want to show what it's like to open up the heart, both from someone who is talking and asking the question, and also the person who is talking. And I don't know if I got there, and I think I did that a
I
little bit
think you
with
did.
you,
Yeah.
as did Bruce open up, and what it's like to have an expansive open heart. So and I have different kind, and with you I got a little bit more brave right from the beginning, where I wasn't going to ask the question about with most, like, well, I have business owners and people like that on the podcast, and I reserved those kinds of things towards the. I still do it with everyone, because I want to get to the essence of who they are, right? Want to get to the gut, basically. And in your case, I started off early with some of those profound questions, which is, what does it mean to have the heart? What's the definition of a heart? Because we talk about it, but we don't ask about it. And I could do that, and you did a beautiful job speaking from that, and so I appreciate that. I don't know if I have anything to say that this could improve that. I mean, it's once you speak from the heart, everything goes out the door. I'm not gonna say anything about, okay, you could have brought a PowerPoint, which I don't think would have helped at all. So
No.
when you speak from the heart, and when you can allow the heart to completely split open and speak from there, so you were authentic, you were genuine, and you are an example of what you teach others, coach others to do.
All right.
So
I should try. So
yeah.
thank you. I appreciate that.